Hi, welcome to the May 2015 Educational Technology Advisory Council Town Hall meeting. I'm Joe Moreau. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Technology for the Foothill-De Anza Community College District. And this month's Town Hall session topic is technology purchasing, making the right decision at the right time and at the right price. What we hope to share with you today are some guidelines that you can use to optimize your opportunities when you're shopping for technology solutions. Just a bit of background on the Town Hall program. In 2014-15, our Educational Technology Advisory Committee, which is our district level planning, technology planning committee, really suggested that we do a better job of reaching out to stakeholders throughout the district to help you all understand the kinds of things that are being talked about and planned for and prioritized in terms of technology. So we've been using a variety of formats this year. The Town Hall meeting has been very popular. This, I believe, is our sixth session this year, and we will continue to do this next year. So if you've got suggestions for next year, please feel free to email me or any of the members of ETAC. You can find the ETAC roster on the ETS website. And send us your ideas for topics for next year. Probably we will start the year off next year with the first town hall session in October with a telephone system update. We'll be very, very close to starting the replacement of our telephone system in October, and we'll bring everybody an update on how that will happen, what the timeline will be, and when you can expect to see new things show up on your desk or your computer. So with that, let's talk about how best we can optimize our purchasing power when we're out shopping for technology. So there's a whole variety of things to keep in mind when purchasing technology. This session is not intended to tell you what to buy, where to buy it, how to pay for it, how much you should pay, any of those kinds of things. This is really helping you provide you with some guidelines about how to evaluate purchases and make sure that you're getting the best return on your investment for the kinds of resources that you've got to spend. So first and foremost, what we'd like to have everybody be more aware of is the fact that we really do have a requirement to purchase technology that is fully accessible, meaning that it can be easily and robustly used by users who may have disabilities. This is not just the right thing to do, it's also state and federal law, and it says that any public agency investing taxpayer resources has to make things accessible to users of all ability levels. So what we would really like you to think about is consider these requirements up front. If you do it at the beginning, it will save you a lot of time and effort and probably a lot of money if you make it known to the vendors that you're sending inquiries out to that what you have to look at has to be accessible. And one of the things that you can ask a vendor to provide is a document called a VPAT, or Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. This is based on kind of a national standard. It's a self-reporting document that a vendor fills out to say, this is how our products meet the accessibility guidelines of the federal government and perhaps of your state. Again, remember that it's self-reporting so that vendors are not always 100% accurate with exactly how accessible their technology is. So the other recommendation that we'd have for you is when you're evaluating products from a vendor, make them demonstrate their accessibility. So have them show you how it can be used with a screen reader, or have them show you how it can be used without using a mouse, but by using keyboard commands, or have them show you how it will respond to some sort of voice activation system like Dragon Naturally Speaking or something of that sort. And if you're unsure as to how to do that or what the actual accessibility requirements should be, both colleges have an excellent DSPS department, Disabled Student Programs and Services. The folks in those offices are more than happy to advise you on exactly how things should be accessible. They'd be probably more than happy to participate in product evaluations with you to help you understand the accessibility requirements. Or the other resource that we have is the High Tech Center Training Unit. This is housed here at De Anza College. It's been a special program that the college has hosted for about 20 years. And this is actually a statewide program that we manage. that advises all of our colleges throughout the state on how to make things accessible, how to train faculty, DSPS coordinators, all kinds of folks on how to use accessible technology and how to make sure all of our resources are fully accessible. So the folks at the High Tech Center Training Unit are also eager to help you make sure that your technology purchases are accessible. One of the things that you'll want to think about as you start an investigation of a technology solution is what's the scope and scale? Because if this is a big project that's going to take a long time and cost a lot of money, your project may be required to go through some sort of governance process. If it's small and doesn't cost a lot and doesn't take a lot of time, maybe it just requires your manager, your dean, your VP to approve that. But if you've got a large scale and scope project, it may need to go to, at the very least, your college senior leadership. Typically speaking, president's cabinets like to review significant technology projects to make sure that they're prioritized properly. You may also need to present and get some feedback from your college technology task force. And if it's a really significant project, you may also need to get that reviewed and prioritized by ETAC, the Educational Technology Advisory Committee. We don't see a lot of huge projects like that anymore. The things that we're doing are much smaller in scope, but we can help you figure that out and determine what governance process, if any, your project may need to go through before it's approved. You also may need to get the project prioritized by my management team so that we can figure out exactly when we can help you do this. We have excellent resources, but they're not unlimited, and we have to figure out when we can work your project into our overall work plan. And again, there may be some prioritization coming from the governance bodies that have the need to look over what folks are working on. We are going to be implementing for the fall a new online technology project initiation form. I was able to take a look at the prototype of that today. It's very easy to use. It'll provide people with a nice description of the workflow, of where their project request is at any given time. It'll give the governance bodies an opportunity to look over projects, review them, and vote on them, things of that sort. And you will have access to that. Everybody will have access to that in the fall, and I think that'll streamline the project request process tremendously. The other thing to keep in mind, depending on the scope and scale of your project and the total cost, your project may need to go to bid. So if your project is going to cost more than $88,000, that's the bid limit currently, we have to, most of the time we have to put projects like that out to bid. Now, when you think about what costs add up to $88,000, it's generally not just the first year cost of the product. It's usually the cost plus the tax plus the maintenance plus any implementation costs that you may have, and it's also the 3-year cost. What's the maintenance and support going to be over the subsequent years after you purchase it? So you have to really factor all those things in. Now, sometimes we can purchase things off of existing contracts. California has a system called CMAS, the California Multiple Awards schedule. The state has pre-negotiated contracts for us, which we can buy off of and don't have to go to bid. There are also regional contracts that are very similar. There's one in the western states called WISCA that we often buy off of. So there are other ways that we can avoid the bid process for large-scale products very legitimately, but we can help you figure out whether there's a contract that we can buy off of or whether you do need to go to bid. So you want to, if you need to go to bid, you can pretty much assume that that's going to add about 6 months to the process, just simply because that's how long it takes to get it done. So you want to keep that in mind as you're figuring out what the scope and scale of your project is. One of the things that we'd really like to help people do is avoid duplicate investments. So as you're beginning to think about the kinds of things that you might need for your department, for your classes, your program, whatever the case may be, you'll want to check and see, do we already own something like this? For example, the district has a huge portfolio of resources. In addition, the California Community College system may already own some of the technology or may have a contract for some of the technology you're looking for. So you may you may find out by talking with us or talking with our colleagues in purchasing that the district has the identical technology that you need, or that we may have an alternative solution that is pretty close to what you need, and we can implement that for you much more quickly, and it may not cost anything additional. So our advice to you is consult with ETS at the beginning of your product evaluation process so we can help you understand what is already in production that you may be able to use without having to go acquire something new. The other thing is that we may be working with another department or program in researching a very similar kind of need, and so there may be an opportunity for you to partner with another group or some folks at another college to combine your needs, improve your leverage, improve your bargaining position, and really maybe simplify the implementation process. So let's look and see what others are doing, what others may need that are similar to what your needs are so that we can maybe partner with them. Beware of the demo. One of the things that we tell people all the time is that the demonstration of a product may not truly represent the real workings of the technology you're looking at. A demo is just that. It's a demonstration of the features and functionalities of products that you're thinking about. And really, the thing to remember is that vendors, and very rightfully so, set up demonstrations to show their product in the best light. But you also have to keep in mind that they may have taken quite a number of shortcuts in order to make that demonstration look really wonderful and impressive. And that the kinds of real-world scenarios that you may need to use that product for may not be reflected in the demonstration conditions. So one of the things that we tell people is be prepared to ask really hard questions and require the vendor to demonstrate features and functionality of their products that are absolutely specific to your needs here at Foothill-De Anza. So we can help you with that in a number of ways. We've seen an awful lot of demos, so we can kind of tell you the kinds of things to look out for. But we can also help you by developing case studies or demonstration scenarios or other kinds of specific requirements that you may want to see the vendor demonstrate. And most of the time they're happy to do that, especially if we can give them those specifications in advance so they can develop their demo and prepare for that. And we're more than happy to help you develop those as part of your requirements documents for a product that you're looking for. You don't need your IT group to implement this product. Watch out for this. Really be very careful. We are seeing more and more cloud-based providers or people that provide what are called SaaS solutions, software as a service, sending their sales reps to visit with our folks and telling them, you don't need any IT support to implement this. This is a total turnkey solution. You don't even have to tell your IT people you're doing this. Just sign the contract, give us a check, and we'll make it all work perfectly. Don't believe it. I'll tell you, I have not seen a single product or solution that fits that bill. Somehow, some way, you're going to need some level of support from ETS or from another organization on campus to make your product work as well as you might like it to, even if it's cloud-based or software as a service. So what are some of the kinds of things that you might need help with? Well, first of all, you may say, well, I want to use this product and I want everybody to be able to sign in with their regular CWID and password. Well, that's fine. That's no problem. We're happy to help with that. We do it all the time. We do it for multiple systems that are cloud-based or software as a service, but that requires us to step in and help and integrate that product with our identity management system. Again, happy to do it. We do it all the time, but you'll need us to be part of that. You may want data out of Banner or some other system exported and loaded into this cloud-based or SaaS-based system that you've selected. Again, that's fabulous. We do it quite often. We're very good at it. We're happy to do that. You may want data to come back into Banner. Again, we do it all the time and are very good at it. But again, you'll need us to help with that because the vendor will not be able to access our data without cooperation from the ETS team. You may want a cloud-based application implemented with another system. So, for example, one of the most common requests we get are people select a system for a niche application, and they want that integrated into My Portal. They want to have that on the student channel or the faculty channel or the employee channel or what have you. Again, very easy to do. We do it quite often. We're happy to help with that, but you'll need us to make that work. And then finally, sometimes depending on the kind of application or product or solution that you're using, it probably needs some sort of access to our network. And we try very hard to keep our network secure and safe. And so when we add new things to the network and we want to make sure that they're accessing it safely and securely, you'll need our help to kind of figure that out. So if you have a vendor that shows up that says, you don't need your IT people, boy, that should send up a red flag, and you should call us right away so we can come over and help you. One of the things you want to be careful of is look at the total cost of ownership of a product or solution. The price that you're quoted is not always the total cost. It may be the initial license cost, or it may be the first year cost, or something like that. And oftentimes there are other cost components that can affect the scope and scale and the affordability of your project. So what are some of the other cost components that you might need to take into consideration? A lot of times the cost that you get quoted doesn't include the cost to implement. So the vendor might say, well, you know, here's the license cost for our system, or here's the product cost for our system, and here's a 3-inch binder full of instructions on how to implement this. And you go right ahead and implement it yourself at no cost. Of course, there's always a cost of labor and time, but a lot of times people look at that and go, whoa, I don't think we really have the time to do that. Maybe we should get some help from the vendor to implement. They're almost always happy to help for a price. So you want to make sure that if you're looking for implementation services from the provider, you're going to want to make sure that you understand what those costs are. A lot of times people want solutions customized. They might say, well, you know, this is really pretty close to what we want, but it's not exactly what we want. So what we really want is we want to get it customized a little bit. We want to add our logo and our visual identity into that and brand it for our college. We want this word changed from that to that because that has more meaning on our campus, things of that sort. Again, many providers are more than happy to customize their products to meet your needs. Again, they will do that for a price. So if it's not something that you can customize on your own through a configuration menu or something like that, you may need to pay the vendor to help with the customization, and you'll want to understand what those costs are. If you want to integrate that product that you're looking at with some other system like Banner or My Portal or what have you, sometimes the integration is easy and free. Some vendors publish what are called open APIs that allow folks like on my team to be able to integrate for you. Some vendors don't do that. Some vendors force you to buy another module that allows you to integrate with other products. So if you're looking to integrate what you're considering with other systems, you'll want us to help you figure out if there's an integration cost related to that. And of course, maintenance is a big one. Maintenance, you want to typically want to have a maintenance contract on your product. You want to make sure that if something goes wrong, you've got an 800 number to call, or you can get a technician on site, or you can get someone to consult with you or with my staff to be able to fix things. And maintenance has a cost to it. And usually, typically what we see is that maintenance is usually about 20% of the initial purchase price of the product, and that usually has an escalation clause over a period of time, so it might go up by 3% from one year to the next. So you want to make sure that you fully understand what the maintenance costs are related to that. The other thing you might find is costs may change with the amount of usage. So you may find a solution for a particular service that you want to provide to students, and your initial thought is you're going to use it with a small cohort of students, maybe 500 or 1,000 students, and it's a very successful pilot, and now everybody wants to use it, and we're going to have 10 or 15 or 20,000 students using this. Well, depending on how it's licensed, the cost may go up as more people use it. That may also drive up the maintenance costs. So if you're thinking about something, doing it small scale as a pilot with the hope that it will catch on and be very popular and you'll do more of this in the future, you'll want to know what that cost trajectory looks like so you don't get caught by surprise. The other thing you want to factor into the total cost of ownership is what is the level of functional effort and IT effort required to implement your project. One of the things that we discover a lot these days is that people underestimate the amount of staff time, not just of my staff, the IT staff, but of departmental staff, functional staff, to make things happen. If you're not sure how much of the functional effort is required to get something working properly, you may not have enough time at a certain point in the year or across activities or things of that sort to make your staff available to work on these things. So you can always bring in temporary staff sometimes to do that, or you can pay the vendor to help out with some of those things. But all of those things affect the total cost of ownership of the product that you're considering. So you want to give some thought as to what's the functional level of effort, and then we can help you with the IT level of effort so that we make sure that we have the appropriate staff resources to implement your project. To quote my dear friend and colleague Judy Baker, there's no such thing as a free puppy. If you've ever gone to the supermarket or somewhere where there's some poor young lad with a box of puppies who are trying to find a home for him, those puppies sure are adorable and just a lot of fun and just smell so great. But once you pick it up and take it home, that's when the cost starts. So you're buying food and cleaning up after them and taking them to the vet, and it seems like there's no end to the cost of a free puppy. The same kind of thing is true of free solutions. There are a lot of vendors out there that are offering colleges or universities free solutions to say, oh, we have this great system and it does all these incredible things and it's available to you as higher education customers at no cost. Well, you have to be aware of that. Be careful of that, because the cost is probably being paid somehow, some way in other terms, other than us forking over a check to the vendor for the license. So what are some of the other ways that we pay, that costs are paid? Well, a big one is advertising. There may be products that are free for us to use, but the vendor reserves the right to put advertising on the page in order to collect revenue to support the product. Now, that might be okay with you. You may be fine with that and say, oh, yeah, I don't care about the advertising, no problem. As long as it's free, that's great. And that may be just fine, but you want to make that decision actively and purposefully. The other thing that often happens is vendors will say, well, you can use this application for free, but we get to put we get to look at any of the data that you put into the system. Usually that is not a good idea. Typically speaking, that's going to end up in some kind of privacy or confidentiality violation. We're going to be exposing user data to commercial entities that we really don't want to expose, and that's generally going to be problematic. And so that's something that we would really discourage people from agreeing to. It may be that the vendor will offer you an application for free, and they're going to collect data on how users use their system, the kind of choices they make, their behaviors when they're using the system. Are they using it from home? Are they using it from campus? Are they using it at 2 o'clock in the morning? So did they use it 3 times a day, 5 times a week, whatever? That might be okay with you. You may not have a problem sharing that kind of data in order to get something for free. But you'll want to be careful with that, because some people object to having their online behaviors tracked and sold. And so you want to be very purposeful in agreeing to a situation like that. Generally speaking, I would say that's probably not a good idea. But depending on the use, the application that you've got and how you're going to use it, it may be okay. So whenever you see a free puppy show up or a free solution from a provider, one of the things you're really going to want to ask them is what's in it for you. Why is it? How is it that you can offer this to us at no cost? You're obviously not in this for the altruistic purposes of higher education. You're a profit-making company. What's in it for you? Sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. But you want to be careful of that. Partnerships can often save time and money. And again, I touched on this a little bit earlier in the session today, and that is, everybody thinks that their technology needs are unique and nobody has similar kinds of needs. But believe me, we're talking with all kinds of people across the district. Lots of folks have very similar needs. You may not be aware of them, but they actually do. So consider that other departments and programs may already use something you need, or may be thinking about implementing the same thing that you want to implement. So ETS and our purchasing colleagues, we know a lot about the district's technology needs. We talk to a lot of folks who are interested in buying things or implementing things. So we have a really pretty good idea of all of the kinds of things that lots of people need. And we can often put people together, bring various user groups together to partner on common needs. And I can't encourage you enough to look for those kinds of opportunities because it can save you a lot of effort, it can save the district a lot of money, and it can help us implement things faster if we're doing it for multiple people as opposed to a whole variety of one-off solutions. And one of the things that we're seeing with technology these days is that a singular solution can oftentimes be implemented in a way that really meets a distinct need. So the math department at Foothill College may have a need for something, and they implement it one way, and the math department at Anza College may have a similar need, but they want to implement it a different way because they have different characteristics in their programs. And a lot of times we're finding that the flexibility of products allow us to implement a singular solution in a way that meets a very distinct need. So we'd encourage you to look for those opportunities to partner with people across the district. It could really make things a lot easier for you and a lot easier for us to support you if we've got some common solutions across both campuses. Be careful with contracts. Contracts can be really tricky, and we're seeing more and more contracts and license agreements being required by providers as part of the procurement process. One of the things that we see pretty regularly is that contracts and license agreements, their initial draft of those things almost always completely favor the provider and leave the customer out in left field. So we find that typically there are a number of things missing. For example, there's no out clause. So if we buy a product and we use it for a while and we find it doesn't meet our needs, or we find that the company doesn't support it very well, or they're too hard to do business with, or whatever the case may be, we want to have the ability to say, okay, that's it, we're done. We don't want to use this anymore, and we need to be able to get out of that contract. Now, typically speaking, we require about a 30-day out clause, meaning that if we wake up on Monday morning and decide we're not going to use this anymore, we give the provider a 30-day written notice, and after that we cancel the contract or the service. Some providers won't always agree to that, so some people ask for longer terms, maybe like 90 days. I've seen some contracts that say you can only get out of the contract at the annual renewal anniversary, and you have to give us 30 days notice prior to the renewal date, or it's an automatic renewal, things of that sort. But whatever the case may be, we want to make sure we have an out clause. One of the things that we see is regularly missing from contracts are security provisions. So if we're going to provide them with some of our data, what precautions are they going to take to secure that? What happens if they have a data breach? How do they inform us? What's their liability for remediating a breach? Things of that sort. we find that those are almost always terms and conditions that are missing from contracts. And we have boilerplate language that we've worked out that we use to provide to vendors to say, these are the security provisions we need in the contract, figure out where those go in your contract and get back to us. So very important consideration. Also, what's the data recovery provision in a contract? So we've provided some of our data to a vendor to operate a system for us, or they've been operating a system and our users, whether they be students, faculty, or staff, are entering data into the system. And let's say we decide we're not going to use that system anymore. We're not going to do business with that company, or that company goes out of business or something along those lines. We want to make sure that there are contractual provisions to allow us to get our data back. And that means they have to agree to give it to us in a certain kind of format, and they have to agree to give us a certain amount of time to get it back, and they have to provide us with a certain amount of help in order to get that back. So we want to make sure we cover those bases. Performance guarantees: how well is this thing supposed to work? What's its uptime? Is it working fast enough? All of those kinds of things we want to make sure that we have some kind of performance guarantee or service level agreement in the contract, and so that if it's not performing up to our expectations, we have some remedies to either get our money back or cancel the contract or what have you. And then finally, we want to make sure that every contract has some kind of expiration date. We don't want contracts that run on forever and ever. Typically speaking, our purchasing folks are really discourage us to enter into contracts that are longer than 5 years. Generally speaking, contracts that we enter into at the district are somewhere between 3 and 5 years. But whatever the time period is, you want to make sure it has a definitive expiration date, so it doesn't go on forever and ever and ever with no point to review it or renew it. You also want to beware of limited time offers. A lot of times vendors will give you this really attractive price, but they say, but you got to decide by tomorrow. And if you don't decide by tomorrow, or you don't decide by Friday, the deal's off. Well, if they really want to do business with us, they will give us the time that we need to make an effective decision. Now, sometimes you'll find that vendors, as they approach the end of a sales quarter or they approach the end of their fiscal year, they're very, very motivated to give good discounts in order to get a sale counted in that quarter or that fiscal year. We've seen that quite often, and that's actually a pretty legitimate limited time offer. And so if you have some opportunities to take advantage of that, you may be able to save some really good money on a deal. But be careful of being pressured by salespeople or vendor representatives who say, this price is only good for 4 days, and after that it doubles, or whatever the case may be. Again, we see a lot of contracts in ETS and in purchasing. We'll be more than happy to help you negotiate a contract, help you review that contract, can provide you with some guidance as to what may be missing from your contract, and we're happy to do that. Also, depending on what you're buying or contracting for, that contract may also require district legal counsel review. And that may take a couple of weeks to get. Again, either myself or Pam Gray, we're happy to help you get your contract to our legal counsel, John Shoup, so he can review that and give us some feedback. And he's almost always a very valuable partner in this with us to make sure that we get the best possible terms on the contracts we negotiate. One of the other things to be careful of when you're purchasing technology is be sure to understand the restrictions on procurement cards. So the district business office does restrict the use of procurement cards for technology purchases. This applies both to one-time purchases as well as subscription purchases. Generally speaking, technology purchases over $100 are not allowed on procurement cards. However, you may be able to get a waiver on that. So we are finding that people need to purchase things that you may only be able to pay for with a credit card. There's no other way to pay for it. You can't write them a check. You can't send them a PO, any of those kinds of things. So in that case, you'll want to get permission from the business office to make that purchase on a procurement card. But be careful of the kinds of things you buy with technology on a procurement card. You don't want to be out buying laptop computers or tablet computers or things or printers or things of that sort on a procurement card. That will send up a red flag in the business office, and it will not be pleasant. But when in doubt, consult with the business office or purchasing. They'll be more than happy to give you some guidance on what you can and cannot buy on a procurement card and help you figure out the best way to buy whatever it is that you need in terms of technology. There are a lot of district resources available to help you with technology purchases, to help you with contracts, to help you evaluate products, all of those kinds of things. You can contact Sharon Luchu on my staff in Educational Technology Services. Sharon knows a lot about this stuff. She may not be the best person to consult with you on a particular purchase, but she can make sure that your inquiry gets to the right member of our staff, whether that might be me or Chin Shi or Jose Rueda or John Vandercook or any number of people on our staff. We'd be more than happy to help you. But Sharon knows who's got what expertise and how to connect you with the right person to consult on your technology purchase. The other person you might talk with at the beginning of a purchase inquiry, Pam Gray, our Director of Purchasing. She's exceptionally knowledgeable and is really very skilled at helping people find the most streamlined way to do whatever it is that they need to do to make a technology purchase. If you have questions about what's permissible on a Procard, you can always contact Carla Maitland in the district business office. She's the Procard guru and can really tell you what the rules are and what you can and cannot buy on a Procard. And then, of course, we've got two excellent campus technology contacts, Dean Lori Rank at Anza and Dean Judy Baker at Foothill. These are people that are exceptionally knowledgeable about technology, about what the campuses are already doing, what may be available to the district, what may be available at the state level, and they can give you some great feedback on how to proceed with the technology purchase. And of course, each college also has a furniture and equipment and FF&E coordinator, as they're called, and they do a lot of the purchasing of equipment of all sorts and work very closely with us and with the purchasing department, so you can always contact your FF&E coordinator for assistance with technology purchases. So again, if you have any questions or need any assistance, please feel free to contact me or Pam Gray in purchasing, and we'll be sure to get you to the right person to make the best possible decision you can on a technology purchase. So thanks for your time.